All right, it's raining, so I can't ride my bike. I could go ride at the place where it's probably not raining, but I got to work a little bit too early for that. So, at least until it stops raining around here. I did some videos lately, a couple of them, and I've done a lot over the years about kind of, I guess I'm running apologetics for tablature, right? But just, this whole tablature versus standard notation thing. I First of all, I think it's a false dichotomy. There's reasons to use both, but usually what people say about tablature is just wrong, dumb, but often it's even malicious. It's at best you could say this is an argument, uh, appeal to tradition, fallacy, appeal to antiquity. So let's just look at what this fallacy is, right? A logical fallacy means you can't get to that conclusion from the argument you made. And let's see, this is from philosophyterms.com. An appeal to tradition fallacy is a mistaken thinking that what happens when someone says that a certain way of doing things is the best way simply because it's the way it's been done for ages. It's like insisting that something is good just because it's old. And you know the old joke, right? The young fool or the old fool says this is older, therefore good. And the young fool says this is newer, therefore better. And that's another fallacy called the appeal to novelty, right? When something is new, it's automatically better. Just because something's old doesn't mean it's better. And this really hits home with what's going on in a lot of especially the Ivy League colleges right now. So here's some examples to appeal to traditional fallacy. Examples in education. Imagine a school, and this doesn't take much imagination if you've been reading the news. Imagine a school that uses the same curriculum it's used for 50 years because that's how we've always taught students. This is an appeal to tradition because the school is avoiding updates to the curriculum that might include current information or better teaching methods. The tradition is not necessarily good, it's just familiar to them. So I think you have an idea what this is. And to be fair, this is all over music. Why do we use 50, 60, 70-year-old microphones? Appeal to tradition. There's, in every way, these newer microphones are better. I mean, it's really hard to not say it that way. Start something real quick. Sorry about that. So think about like what everybody's always talking about. They want these old mixing consoles, these old mic preamps. They want tape, all this stuff, because that's what old people did. That's the reason. And anytime we actually test these things and we find that a lot of times the newer ones are superior, it's not because they're newer, it's because technology has advanced since then. It's not just because they're newer, I should say. So anyway, I think you understand what this fallacy is, and you see it in the music industry all the time. I mean, basically it's, you look at the Luddites or the Amish or whatever, think about how many amazing scientific and medical discoveries you get from the Amish community every year, right? They're the living embodiment of appeal to antiquity. And it shows in their output. So anyway, I'll look at a couple. I had a lot of comments on Facebook and stuff, YouTube, about why tablature is so bad, but almost every single time is a misunderstanding. Properly formatted tablature. Yeah. It's off here. Tells you everything that standard notation does. Everything. And then some. A lot of people give you the example. I'll do it again right here. Here's E on the guitar. open on the high E string, 5th fret on the B string, same E, 9th fret on the G, 14th fret on the D, 19th fret on the A string, and 24th fret on the low E string. Those are all the same note. There's one place where tablature tells you something that standard notation doesn't. Now, standard notation may give you position information. And if they do, because it's kind of an XY system, if you do know what position you're in, then you'll be able to figure out what string you're on. Also, if you know what string you're on, you'll be able to figure out sort of what position you're on, but that's a whole nother thing. Both standard and tablature can tell you finger positions. They don't usually, and often that is where I say it's the malicious part. They just say, oh, well, you should know. But, you know, nobody agrees on this stuff. And especially in modern guitar playing where the playing is so crazy fast, what string and what position matters. And people will argue about what finger you should use, for example. And two different guitar players could be just as good and do it two different ways. So this whole snobbery of, oh, you shouldn't show this information to new students. You should already know where to go. Well, when one of these fogies hangs with Yngwie Malmsteen or Steve Vai, I'll take that into consideration, but they won't. So anyway, let's go to some of these videos. I just want to look. Hold on, let me turn on the AC. Okay, let's have a listen. So this is tabs or sheet music, which is better? Now, a lot of these are long. I'm just going to speed these up. I don't know that we're going to watch the whole thing, but let's just see. So this is Phil Goldenberg. Haven't seen any of this. But it says tabs or sheet music, which is better? Already I say that's a false dichotomy. Let's take a look at a piano part. You know, sure, the tablature is cool for the piano part because if you wanted to try and play what the piano's playing on guitar, you can see it. But I'm gonna go show standard notation here. On a piano, you can only play a certain note in one place. That's it. Period. One place. A lot of instruments are the same way. If you have multiple stringed instruments like a harp or violins or cellos or whatever, then that's a different story. I think there would be some serious benefit even for like, well, I know for bass for sure, but I think even violin and stuff, but because they don't have frets, it's a little trickier. So, you know, standard notation, I don't know. Maybe just tell what string you want that note on, because some of that stuff is pretty fast and the notes get clustered and people do argue which fingers they should use. But for piano, I'd say standard notation is probably better. For guitar, depends what you're doing. I would still say tablatures can be better every single time, but I think people could argue that, especially if you're playing slower stuff. So anyway, let's see what he has to say.
How are you feeling today? I mean, really, how are you feeling? I hope that you're in a calm, and that is tab versus sheet music or standard notation. And to be honest, I don't even really understand why this is such a heated debate, why people get so, like, hot about this topic. Because to me, it's just like two different tools. Like, which tool do you want to use?
This guy's making sense. We might have to end the video here.
Which tool do you prefer? It's not really like a personal topic. So I'm going to break down the features of both of these systems of learning music, sort of like a product review, as if you weren't sure if you wanted to buy tabs or if you wanted to buy standard notation. And then you can make your own decision based on who you are as a player. And I can give my own recommendation at the end. And I'll give you a little spoiler, it's not going to be the same for everybody. So let's start this whole thing off with a discussion about tabs. What are tabs? Tabs are a really old system of notation that are specific to one instrument, which is originally it was the lute and some guitar, and now it's really guitar. So it's a specific style of writing down music for guitar and guitar players. Back in the day, there used to be a whole bunch of different kinds of tablature, but now there's only one, and that's actually technically it's called Spanish tab, because there were all these different kinds of...
I didn't know that.
Tablature. There's French tablature and German tablature and Italian tablature. But Spanish tablature is the one that we associate with regular tabs today. And so the way that that works is you've got 6 lines. Each line represents one string on the guitar. And each line, right on the line, there is a number. And the number indicates what fret to put your finger on and play. So basically the only thing that tabs tell you is where to play a note.
No. That may have been true a long time ago. Actually, no, that's not even true. Because if you know the tuning of your guitar and you see the number there, it's not just telling you where to play a note. It's telling you what note that is. You may not like me saying it that way, but it's true. If it's the 12th fret on the low E string and it's a standard tuning, I know that it's an E. Period. 5th fret, it's an A. So that wasn't true. I think what he means to say is that it doesn't show you rhythm information or whatever, but that's not true either, is it? Let me go to guitar and let's put just the tablature. Oops, sorry. Let's see. I see rests. I see note duration. I see that this is palm muted. I could have dynamics on here if I wanted. Anything that you can show in standard notation. Look here, the artificial harmonic right here. It's telling you actually what note it appears to be. Anything you can show on standard notation, you can show with tablature. The reverse isn't necessarily true. So you don't know what string you're on with standard notation.
Just where to play a note. And it's actually really great because recently there's been a move to include rhythm in there. So not only does it tell you...
It's not that recently. This is back to at least 1985. So... was that 40 years? 90, that's so bad. Yeah, it's like 40 years of recently. It's recently in how long human beings have been making music, but it's not really recently.
You where, but if you get some good tabs, it'll also tell you when to play the note. So that's great. It tells you where and when.
Yeah, see, there you go.
So those are the basic features of tabs. Those are actually all the features of tabs.
No. You've got everything else you can show in standard notation. You've got dynamics, you've got key, you've got time signature, you've got tempo. All that stuff can be represented in tabs. This is not true.
It tells you where to play the note and when to play the note. So the best part of tabs is actually that it's incredibly easy to learn. It's super easy to learn. Most of the time, with an adult or like a teenager student, they can figure out how to read tabs in like 20 minutes. That's incredible because adults and teenagers, people with a little bit more developed bodies, not little kids, but people who have developed their hands, have motor control. They have fine motor control, and they can actually play things. You start playing, that's valuable. It's just got this growth thing curve. You have to invest a lot of time in learning how to use that program. Where you could also get a program like Audacity, which is a free program to your recordings, but a program like Pro Tools, you know that there's a ton of features in there. There's so much. This is
a bad analogy. Some of the more complicated to use DAWs actually aren't as powerful as the simpler to use one. You know, being part of someone who's part of making one of those DAWs, I can tell you that it can do a lot of things that the more complicated ones can't. So that's kind of a bad analogy. Let me see.
It tells you what to play.
Tab tells you what to play. How does standard notation show you what to play in tabs don't? So let's hear how he explains this.
Huge. So rather than only telling you where to play the note, it tells you what the actual note is. And what
does tab? You're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. Here. Anybody plays guitar? Actually, so this is a weird tune song. Let me go find a regular tuning. Again, though, that's one of the beauties of tab. You can tell just by looking at something what style of tuning is in often. Okay, let's go to AC/DC here. All right, let's go to tablature. Here's this note right here. 3 on the high E string. You know what note that is, right? You know that's a G. If this guitar's in regular tuning, that's a G. You know that. This argument is not true. What that does is
it gives you options. It gives you different options for where you might want to play that note. So
yeah, that's a disadvantage. So again, the standard notation just tells you G. Which G? The one on the high E string, the one on the B string, the one on the G, the one on the D, and so forth. So to me, that's not an advantage, that's a disadvantage. Almost always when you're having arguments with religiously motivated arguments, there's a term that you'll hear, allergic to precision. And that's kind of this. Here's more precision, and somehow you're allergic to it.
Go back to that C. Let's say that you look at that C on the piece of paper. Well, there's more than one C on the guitar. And I'm not talking about different octaves. I'm talking about the same exact note
so that's
on
a
different
disadvantage.
strings, because it does appear more than once. So you have the option. You might want to play that C first fret on the B string, or you might want to play it fifth fret on the G string, or 10th fret on the D string, or 15th fret on the A string, or 20th fret on the 6th string, the low E string. Now, each one of those notes is going to have different sort of timbral qualities, different, it's going to sound different. Each one.
Are you okay? I'm sorry I keep interrupting this, but okay. You have options when it's standard notation. Bam, there's your option on tablature. Put it on another string. If you go find some tabs online and you don't like how they're playing it, you're free to move those around. Cluster them how you like. That this is not an argument.
One is going to convey a different idea of what you think that note should be, and that really gives you so much more. It gives you so many more options as a
You got all the same options with tablature.
performer. So in most guitar interpreter, so the second thing it does is it also tells you where to play the note. So in most guitar sheet music, there's going to be a little number with a circle around it.
So okay, so he's just showed a position. Okay. This section we just talked about right here, what to play, is now just completely invalidated because now he's saying that he's going to tell you on the sheet music where to play it.
That tells you what string to play that note on. Now, you don't have to take their advice on this.
Yeah, same as tablature. You don't have to take their advice. Okay, this guy is way off.
3, it always tells you when to play. So rhythmic notation, like I said before, is so deeply a part of standard notation that you really can't separate it. And there's so much fine control.
But this is arguing about a problem they had 60 years ago. Standard, properly formatted tablature today has rhythmic notation, so that goes away. Fingers, okay.
Is it tells you how to play. So this is here to make it even easier for you. In most guitar sheet music, the composer or the editor has put another number next to the note that says what finger to actually use.
Oh, of course they don't do that in tablature, right? Let's see. So let's say you were going to do this kind of blues guy style. Oh, look at that. There's your fingers. Okay. All right, this video's dumb. Let's move on to another one. Let's see. Okay. It's going to speed this guy up. Just wrong on so many levels.
The title of this blog is Tablature versus Standard Notation. Actually, maybe the title of the blog should be Tablature and Standard Notation, because I think one of the issues with tablature is that a lot of people think that it's opposed to standard notation.
Yeah.
When actually, I think there's some advantages and disadvantages to knowing both. And I think tablature can be used as a good step to teach students how to read standard notation. Sometimes the disadvantages in standard notation, people might think sometimes, well, you don't know standard notation, so you don't know music that everybody else reads, all of the other instruments. And that's probably true. If you know how to read standard notation as a guitar player, you can play the same music that is played by the other instruments. However, tablature can be a great stepping stone, and there's some other advantages to tablature as well. For one, it's easy. If you can count, you can read tablature. See, there's kind of a dual process that goes on in reading music, and when you read notes, you have to associate the name of the note or where the note is written, and then you have to memorize where that note is played as another process, and then play the note. Where in tablature, it tells you instantly where the note is played. Now that, again, that could have some advantages and some disadvantages. But if you read tablature and you put the stems on the tablature, or you circle the numbers to indicate half notes and you circle the numbers to indicate whole notes, you can still learn how to read rhythms correctly, but you can kind of omit that one process of having to memorize where the note is located. So you're working primarily in tablature with the physical part of where to play the note. And then later on, you can learn where those notes, memorize where those notes are placed, and find out that you've been playing them all along when you've been reading tablature. And the conversion from tablature to standard notation is very, very easy. Another great thing about tablature is that you can probably play music that is more complex than it would be in standard notation. You can play that.
Yeah, and unless you're given the string or position information, which is tablature. The tablature is going to teach you, if it's accurate to what the performer played, to actually how they played it. Because I'm not the best guitar player in the world, but I can wail on a lot of people. And I'll tell you, at a certain speed, there's a way you can play things, and then there's a way you can make it way harder to play, and you know, it's not going to work out very well for you. And knowing where to cluster your notes is huge, and tablature gives you that immediately. Standard notation, unless they write the position information and everything else on it, is not going to do that. And even when it does, it adds another layer of figuring things out, whereas the tablature is immediately precise.
That music earlier. You can play music that maybe gets up the neck or is maybe a little bit more rhythmically complex than it would be with standard notation because you've learned how to read tablature first. Another advantage to playing tablature, or another reason to know how to read tablature, is it's not going away. Tablature is here, and it's all over the internet, and it's in books, and it's very popular. And in fact, guitar music was originally written in tablature. Some of the early guitar music, some of the early lute music.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Nick West was talking about this.
And another advantage to tablature is if you're using an altered tuning, especially if you tune more than one of the strings to an altered tuning. Suppose you're playing an open D tuning, then it makes a lot of sense to read tablature because the pitch of the notes are in a different place than you memorize them when you were learning with standard.
This guy's gonna get excommunicated from the standard notation fedora hat jobs.
Standard tuning. So there's some advantages there. Of course, the advantage to reading standard notation is that you can read music for other instruments. Other instruments can read your music. It just makes a lot of sense if you're trying to learn some music theory. Then standard notation makes all the sense in the world. And
I don't know. Okay, I've said it before. I mean, I can look right here, music theory wise. I know this is E minor just by looking at this one part right here, right? I know that's E minor. I learned music theory more from reading tablature than anything else.
It's the language that everybody around the world that reads music, they read standard notation. So there's some good advantages and reasons to learn standard notation.
Yeah, I'm not saying don't learn standard notation.
Tablature as a way to introduce standard notation, it makes a lot of sense. For example, students could be learning the notes on the first string, open, 1, and 3, written in tablature. On the second string, open, 1, and 3, and so on. And they play, the trick there is to play the tablature in the same position that the notes are going to be. So they've already been playing open, 1, and 3, open, 1, and 3, open, 2, and so on. They've been playing those notes already. And then when you show them that, oh, what you were playing was an E, F, and a G, you've already been playing them. Physically, you know how to play them. So now to convert to the notes is really not a problem. I've taken many, many young students through this process, and they read standard notation very quickly. They adapt to that very quickly if they've done the tablature. Now, some people would say maybe in the Consonus beginning book that maybe we stay on tablature too long for them. They want to get into standard notation sooner. Don't be afraid to skip from the tablature section over to the standard note reading section. So after your students have played just for a little bit on tablature.
I think this guy is mostly right. Okay, let's see what this other one does. Yeah, I'm going to too many guitar players, aren't I?
Hi, I'm Jennifer from Camshi Studio, and I wanted to answer a question that some of my students have asked me when they begin. And the question is, should I learn to read standard notation, or should I learn to read tabs? Well, my short answer is, yeah, you should read standard notation. There's a few advantages, and I'll explain to you what I think about it. So first of all, standard notation helps you learn the names of your notes on the fretboard. So tablature doesn't really tell you that, but standard notation does.
Yes, it does. However, standard notation more immediate. Again, this is where precision comes in. Note-wise, standard notation is immediately precise about what note that is. It takes another step for tablature. Just like standard notation can tell you where on the guitar you're playing, but it takes some more steps. So in the case of knowing what note you're actually playing, I think I would give it to standard notation. Not necessarily, but that note that you put on there, it's that note. That's all it is. If you see a staff, you know immediately what note that is, as long as you can read it.
The next reason is standard notation is universal. And once you learn to read
It's important.
notes on the staff, you can pretty much learn any other instrument too. Once you learn how to read music, you can play anything. The third one is not all music has tablature. So sometimes you have a song that you really want to learn, especially certain classical guitar pieces, and doesn't exist in tablature.
Okay, but that goes both ways, right? You are never, ever, ever going to find standard notation transcriptions for a lot of the super shredders out there. I mean, sure, this is great for old people music, whatever. And somebody could go out and write somebody's, I don't know, is there polyphia? I mean, of course, because it's written Guitar Pro, you can easily convert it to standard notation. So it's out there, but you're not going to find super shredder music in standard notation without finding it in tablature. So I don't think this is a very good one.
So sometimes top reasons why I would learn music notation. I just think theoretically it's important to learn.
It's good to
Now the
learn
next
notation.
thing is tablature. There is an advantage also to knowing how to read tabs. First of all, it's really easy and quick to learn to play reading tabs. And a lot of my students, they start out by reading tabs. The second is that a lot of music exists. Is that tabs help you play quickly to school, and it was then that but it's really important to get started playing and to enjoy your instrument. If you wait until theoretically you know everything before you can play, you're going to wait quite a while and you'll probably lose interest in your instrument. So the most important thing is to get playing, have fun, and learn the music.
77 subscribers, man. I think I got more than her. That's terrible.
I think it's good to read notation.
You got a way better channel than I do.
Tablature, and to really be able to do both. If you like this video and you'd like to see more like it, please like and subscribe.
All right, let's see. Okay, so this guy. Which is better, tablature versus standard notation?
The skinny on tablature. Tablature tell me when I ask them about reading notes, they say, well, that's too hard. Tablature is easy, which is true. And then I have guitar teacher tell me, oh, I don't want students reading tab. They need to learn to read notes. It seems to me that they're both valuable, and it's helpful to be able to understand basic note reading and to be able to understand tablature and to use both, either one when it's appropriate and sometimes even both. Now, a lot of people do think that reading notes is too hard and tablature is easy. In fact, reading notes is not that hard. It does take more time, and especially if you just look at notes, it doesn't make sense. But with a methodical approach, it's really not that hard to read music.
Turn off this stuff.
With that said, there are some pros to reading tablature. It is very easy to understand just by looking at it. It's a more natural representation of the guitar neck. You can see it looks like a guitar fretboard. The other thing, it's very available. It's easy to find tabs on free websites. All over, you can find pretty much any song somewhere. And the other thing is, if you want to create some tablature yourself, you can actually do it on a typewriter. You can use regular typewriter font to create a rough version of tab. Now, there are some cons as well.
Because all you kids got typewriters kicking around, right?
The biggest one is that tablature doesn't give you all the information. And
yes, it does. Yes, it does. Okay. This is where I get upset because these are myths. These myths went away in like 1985 at the very latest. I'm betting these myths were gone earlier than that. Tablature gives you every bit of information that you get with standard notation and then some. There's nothing that standard notation gives you that tablature doesn't. Go ahead, tell me where I'm getting that wrong. I'm dying to hear it. Sure. My YouTube paused. There we go. Okay, sorry. Yeah, please, if you have something that you can do in standard notation that you can't do in tablature, let me know.
It doesn't tell you how long to hold the note.
Yes, it does. Definitely tells you how long to hold the note right there. Right there. There's how long. That is what? That's a 16th note. There's an 8th note rest. There's some quarter notes. There's a 16th note, an 8th note, and another 16th note. So that's wrong.
That's a real downside, actually. You either have to know the song or have the recorded version to keep comparing.
Wrong. The other
thing is, if you're looking on free websites for tab, a lot of it is just not accurate. And there's versions from really inaccurate to pretty good.
Well, that happens with standard notation too. Like, how many times have you got the wrong notes when they try and transcribe like complicated bass lines or whatever?
Of course, anybody can put free tablature on the web, so even some 10-year-old boy could scribble out something and put it up there, and it may not be very close to the song. I use sometimes websites to look for tablature, and I just compare different versions and see which sounds more like the actual song.
That's what we do.
Another thing is, when you learn to read music, you're learning something that's universal. You can apply it to other instruments. Tab, you cannot. True. Guitar tablature is only for the guitar.
Tablature is fairly easy to understand. These lines, this is a tablature line, 6 of them represent the 6 strings of the guitar. The top line is the thickest.
See that? This is something already that you don't have in standard notation, unless you want to put the string information, but then it's still going to be faster to get the tab information.
String on the guitar, the low E string. And the bottom line is the high E string, the thinnest string on the guitar. So it goes first string, second string, third string, fourth, fifth, and sixth. The numbers represent
this one. Okay, let's take a look at this one now. This is Andre Tonelli, maybe? See what he has to say. You got like a Parker, is that like a Parker Fly or whatever guitar? And a bunch of Marshalls. You know, this is a bad form of prejudice, but when I see a bunch of analog heads in a world today where we got capturing and modelers, I wonder. That's pretty Luddite.
As a guitar player, should you learn how to read and write music with standard notation, or is tablature enough? Let's shed some light on this.
Okay, we're already off to a bad start. That's a false dichotomy, right? You should learn both, or learn neither. Is tab enough? What do you mean by enough? It's not going to be enough if you got to give it to the piano player, I don't think. Except for, in any modern tablature writing tool. But let's go make a new one. Okay, here, let's just go put electric guitar. Okay, so I got nothing here yet, and I'm going to say, hey, I want you to play G power chord. But the piano player can't read that tablature. Oh, oops. There's something the piano player can read. So
this often overlooked yet crucial question. I'll give you some considerations on each music writing method. I'll give you their pros and cons, and even my advice for those of you who want it. Very quickly, just so you don't think I'm a cork-sniffing musical snob who thinks you should be able to sight read the Concierto d'Aranjuez to be considered a proper guitar player, my beginnings with the instruments were extremely messy. I was thrown on a stage at 14 or 15, and I had no idea what I was doing. So I respect and appreciate the fact that music transcends everything, that there is no right or wrong way of doing things. The idea that there could even be an alternative notation system to the standard one is almost exclusively a modern guitar and bass thing. After all, standard notation has worked for centuries and it's been refined to perfection. So why even bother with tab? On most instruments, it wouldn't make sense to use anything other than standard notation. Can you imagine counting the keys on a keyboard? I mean, your piano tab would be a nightmare. 18, 24, 33, 29, 46.
That's not how you would do it on a piano, is it? You would just have the one line. You'd have one line and you'd have a number on it. That's what piano tablature would look like. This is not right.
Right? It wouldn't make any sense. But on the guitar, because of the way it's constructed, there's an elegance to tab. There's an immediacy to it. It does really make sense. Also, modern guitar is very idiosyncratic. First of all, the guitar is an instrument where you can find one note in many different places. On a piano, a C3 is found here and only here. But on the guitar, I could play the same pitch here, 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 and here. And this can be, as a beginner, extremely confusing and intimidating. Another thing to keep in mind...
Not just as a beginner. I don't care who you are. When you start getting into super shred level, figuring out where on that guitar that thing was played is very important. Just not beginner.
Is the way we first interface with the guitar. When we start playing, we tend to just grab a guitar and make sounds with it and see what happens, much more so than, say, a cello player. The guitar, maybe because of it being a fretted instrument, really lends itself to exploration. I think it also has to do with style. Improvisation and discovery are much more associated with the modern guitar, they say the ARP. So a lot of us start playing without really knowing anything about notes or tempos, etc. We just wing it. And again, I think the frets make it immensely more immediate than, for example, a violin or other instruments. Because of all these reasons, a lot of us start using tab, and then we can easily go for months or years before we actually stop and ask ourselves, what the hell am I playing? And then we realize the limitations of tab. Tab
Think they're about to say something very, very wrong.
Violin or other instruments. Because of all these reasons, a lot of us start using tab, and then we can easily go for months or years before we actually stop and ask ourselves, what the hell am I playing? And then we realize...
What does that have to do with tablature?
The limitations of tab. Tab has shown us how to play things, but hasn't taught us. So what are the pros?
You learned a song by playing tablature. How is it has not taught you? This is okay. We're like reaching peak Doi right here. This is the thing. This is a scary thing. It's almost like a Gish Gallop, right? Everything's making sense, and then just start spitting out the most absurd nonsense. But since you're already flowing the stream of consciousness, nobody's going to slow you down. But I got the pause key right here.
Limitations of tab. Tab has shown us how to play things, but hasn't taught us. So what are the pros of using tab? Well, the first one certainly is that it's extremely straightforward and accessible. Everyone can learn how to read and write tab in just minutes, and that makes it a language that all guitar players can understand. Secondly, with the added rhythmic notation that a lot of modern tab uses, it shows...
Modern as in before this guy was probably even born. Modern.
You everything you need to know to perform and play a piece of music. A common criticism of tab is that it's incomplete, but you can actually show everything on it, including fingerings and dynamics and whatever else. The third pro is that tab will get you playing music on the very first second of your guitar journey, which can be extremely encouraging and motivating for beginners. Now for some cons. First of all, tab gives you no information beyond the physical aspect of playing. It reduces the music to a finger version.
You could say that same exact thing about standard notation. That's nonsense. There's nothing you can show in standard notation that you can't show in tablature. Prove me wrong.
Battleship. And by detaching the music from the instrument, your practice becomes a physical endeavor, but not a...
You haven't detached the music from the instrument.
Finger version of Battleship. And by detaching the music from the instrument, your practice becomes a physical endeavor, but not a musical one. Also, if you're completely oblivious to music reading, I doubt that you'll be able to read the rhythmic information on the tab. And this makes a huge difference because then the tab can't stand on its own 2 feet. You will always need a reference, a record or a performance that you copy by using the tab. Therefore, the tab now is not a representation of the music. Standard notation, on the other hand, was invented and refined through the centuries to
Now we're getting into argument from antiquity.
Accurately represent a piece of music in all its details. If you can read music, you can take a score and recreate it as a composer wrote it centuries ago without needing any oral help.
But you see, they're always talking about centuries ago. We're talking about modern music, man. Go play some of the super shredder stuff without knowing any positional information. Come on.
This means that a musical score is music. It's not just a representation of music. The score is actually the music.
No, the score is a representation of music just as much as it is with tablature. If it is the music, the tablature is just as much the music as the score is. This is nonsense, absolute nonsense. Tell me what piece of information makes the score the music that isn't there in tablature, because you can't.
Pro of music notation is that everything you read and play has musical meaning. There's a key,
so
and there are all these notes and chords that...
All this stuff can be shown in tablature.
Relate to that key. The focus is not on what finger to use where, though there might be indications of that, but on the music itself. So when you read music, you are actually inside the music.
This is a very subjective
Another pro, which I guess some might consider a con, is that when you read a score, you actually have, as we said earlier, several options of how and where to play it on your fretboard. Often that will depend on what precedes and follows the passage you're reading, and therefore you're constantly interfacing with the guitar and the music in a way that...
No. This is where Tab shines. This is the advantage of Tablature. This is guys getting this so wrong.
Follows the passage you're reading, and therefore you're constantly interfacing with the guitar and the music in a way that you would never have to with Tab. You'll be making decisions, forming opinions, and you'll truly understand the instrument.
True.
It makes you a better musician and not just a faster guitar player. This is a big one for me, and that is that when you write music down on manuscript paper, you see it in a totally different way. How a melody evolves through time, the peaks and the valleys, how dense it is in certain places and how sparse in others. There's a contour to music.
You could show all of this in Tablature.
That becomes apparent only when you write it down.
That's
I always
not true.
do that with my melodies and my songs. I put them down on paper as I'm closing in on them because it gives me a totally different look and perspective.
Right, this one's just nonsense, making me upset. I think we've seen enough of this. So please, you guys, show me what you can do in standard notation that you can't do in Tablature. And spare me the 1800s version of Tablature or whatever. I'm talking anything in the last 30, 40 years. So anyhow, hopefully it's dry. I'm going to go ride my bike and I practice a little bit of guitar first.